A small community isolated by a storm. Ordinary people caught in an extraordinary set of circumstances. Death, destruction, and lurid reporting. The accounts of the happenings on that day in the little village of Lanchester are exaggerated. They're disjointed and badly observed, not least by the participants themselves. The creature that is reported to have stalked there drowned a young girl, hacked 2 villages to pieces before finally carrying off a respected doctor, is the romantic notion of simple, non-scientific folk trying to make sense of something which is beyond their simple, non-scientific intellects. I have no doubt whatsoever that science will prove that the reports of a creature that stalked the night are entirely without foundation or merit. With the help of this computer model, I will explain to you how this story unfolded and prove that it has no more validity than last year's mass illusion of a giant ape terrorizing New York City. We begin here at Shelley's Hardware, where Dr. Frankenstein purchased much of his equipment.
He used to come in here for his bolts. I thought he was a lovely man. I don't care what people are saying about him. Always best quality bolts. Always top shelf bolts for Dr. Victor.
I never thought much of the man myself.
You didn't know him?
My wife dealt with him mostly. I spend a lot of time away from the shop. I've got my deliveries and I've got my inventions.
You did go up to the castle.
I've invented a new kind of hammer.
The gentlemen don't want to hear about your hammer. Tell them about the time you went to the castle.
Shelley's Universal Hammer, I call it.
We did go up to Frankenstein Castle. Twice.
To make deliveries.
Always to the front door. Says a lot. Always to the front door.
Wires and bolts and coils.
Always very polite and very classy.
No hammers.
Oh, and that accent. I'll never believe what they're saying about him and her. It's all wrong. It's just all wrong. What that Mr. Wilder said and what he did.
Now, he bought hammers and pitchforks. Lots of pitchforks.
And the enigmatic Mr. Wilder, the supposed leader of the mob. I'm not surprised he won't talk to you. That poor man has been hounded by the press ever since that terrible day. I myself have told Mr. Wilder to seek the advice of a solicitor. What you media people need to do is to look at this thing from a logical, scientific perspective. The whole thing has been blown up out of all proportion. On the word of one eyewitness, Mr. James Whale.
I remember the night very well. I lived alone at the time, in a cottage at the edge of Lugosi Wood. Well, when I say alone, I had my companion, Cheney, my Chinese Chihuahua. He was like a small, 4-legged brother to me. He would curl up at the edge of the bed. When the wind was howling through the hollyhocks, he would climb under the covers. I loved the way he snuffled. I'm sorry, I can't carry on.
I'm sorry, I'll have to stop you there. He's very emotional and gets easily confused. Perhaps we should go to my interview now? I just need to He'll be all right in a moment. He just gets upset when he thinks about it.
So, are you ready for the interview? Whenever you want.
I was at the county hospital mortuary before I came here to the sanatorium. After, well, you know, the stories in the papers. I did know Dr. F. Dr. Victor, he liked to be called, when he was visiting the hospital. He was very popular among the nurses. flowers, chocolates. He was a gentleman. Gentle. A genuine gentleman. All the nurses thought so, but I just knew I was the papers got it all wrong. I mean, he was a gentle man. Are you going to use the photographs from the papers? Or would you like some colour ones? I've got some lovely colour photographs now.
I don't believe what the papers said about him and her. I would have known when he came in to order his wire.
Double HT gauge, I ask you.
I'm sure she meant nothing to him.
Who orders double HT gauge?
They said she had to leave the hospital.
We got wire. We got yards of wire. We got double O, we got HO, we got OH, we got double H, all the way up to TT. But no, he has to have double HT gauge.
Well, I'm not surprised she had to go.
Who uses double HT gauge? And what was he doing with it? Huh?
He never even spoke about her.
You see, if I was there, I'd have told him. I would. I'd have said, you don't need double HT gauge, mate. Single gauge is good enough for you.
You're never here.
I am developing my hammer.
I get lonely.
You should have taken a deposit.
He was a gentleman. A gentleman doesn't pay in advance. A gentleman is trusted.
Because he lives in a castle. Just because he lives in a castle doesn't make him any better than the rest of us. You were just the same with that count and them coffin handles.
We ought to better ourselves. I don't see what's wrong with trying to better ourselves.
We never got paid for the coffin handles. I am going into the shed to rearrange the rakes.
I was on night shift at the mortuary. We're always very careful about how we approach next of kin for organ and limb donations. I wasn't away from the mortuary for more than a few minutes. I'd spilt some water on my uniform, so I'd gone upstairs to a private room to take it off to dry it. I often do my housework at home in my underwear, so I didn't give it a second thought. Dr. Victor was just passing and asked if I'd like some help. There was no need for matron to make all that fuss. I don't know what happened to the head. It was already gone when I got back to the mortuary. I think it was the students.
If you piece the evidence together, like a jigsaw, it's easy to see how the story has emerged, like pictures in a flame. Incidents scattered like stars in the sky, unrelated, but linked into constellations of superstition. This hideous creature as a metaphor for our fears, ruffling the feathers of sensationalist journalists, howling like wolves and drawn like moths to the flaming torches of the romantic notions of village womenfolk. Now, with the help of the computer model, I will show you what really happened that night. The incident of the missing body parts at the mortuary was a student prank, not uncommon even in this day and age. Couple that with the unusual weather and the predominance of thunderstorms caused by global warming. From the testimony of the Shelleys, it's clear that Dr. Frankenstein was making attempts to improve the mobile reception in the area by installing an antenna on his castle tower. On that fateful night of the storm, a little girl fishing by the weir accidentally drowns. Shortly after, 2 woodsmen are dismembered in unfortunate but unrelated chainsaw accidents. And the lightning strike that set the mill ablaze was just bad luck.
I was alone in my cottage. I'd decided to curl up in bed with Lord Byron. I'm a poet myself, you know. There was a banging and wailing at my front door, and I felt the icy blast of the north wind as the door opened and closed. I could sense there was someone in the room with me. I knew it wasn't Cheney, my Chinese chihuahua, because I could hear Cheney chomping chewy chunks of chocolate treats in the kitchen. I remember reaching out with my hands and I touched the stranger. I remember thinking how big he was. He must have been, 7 feet. I asked him to sit down and we talked. I read poetry. I invited him to stay for dinner, and he kindly went to the kitchen to prepare it for me. He must have instantly made friends with Cheney, because after a little yelp, he was so quiet. The stranger found a chicken I didn't know was there, and we enjoyed our meal immensely. We were interrupted by the sounds of a crowd outside. My guest became agitated, and he ran out of the back door. I've written a poem. Would you like to hear it?
Mr. Whale, it's time for your medicine.
I have now received a statement from my solicitors Cushing and Lee, which I'm prepared to make. On the night of the 13th, I had noticed that there was smoke pouring from the windmill. I roused the village and we took pitchforks to throw earth onto the fire and torches to signal from the hill, as the phone lines were down and there is no mobile signal up there. At no time were we aware that Dr. Frankenstein had entered the windmill. There was no second man standing at the top of the tower. We deeply regret we were unable to save Dr. Frankenstein. That's all. Go away.
And there you have it. A series of easily explained coincidences, linked by the overactive imaginations of some village women and poor, confused Mr. Whale, who I'm pleased to say is now receiving excellent treatment at the sanatorium. Is that it? Are we done?
All right, cut there. It's a wrap, guys.
Don't worry, it's in a sturdy box. Only quite a big trailer, though. Yeah. No, it's sedated. Perfectly safe. And the doctors recovered him. But it's vital we keep his survival on a need-to-know basis. Okay? No, the film crew is downstairs. They're loading up. So wait until they